Monique Foster stepped out of the sleek black car. Her driver had pulled up in front of one of the most prestigious luxury hotels in New York City, the grandiose building towering over her. She adjusted the hem of her fitted coat and took a deep breath as she prepared to enter the establishment. It was a place she had dreamed of staying in since her early days, when she was still struggling to make a name for herself in the cutthroat world of business. Now, as a self-made billionaire, she had the means to enjoy such luxuries. The idea of being surrounded by opulence didn't excite her in the way it did to others, but the thought of walking through the doors of this hotel, knowing that her hard work had earned her this moment, filled her with quiet pride. She had a reputation that spoke for itself, a reputation of being relentless, ambitious, and beyond capable. But above all, she was proud of who she had become, proud of the woman who fought through the barriers life had placed in front of her. Monique smiled at the doorman as she entered the lobby, feeling the weight of years of struggle and triumph on her shoulders. Inside the hotel, the atmosphere was immaculate, the marble floors gleaming under the soft light from the crystal chandeliers. The scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, and the murmur of well-dressed guests filled the space. Everything was as it should be in a place that promised only the best. She approached the front desk where the receptionist, a young woman with a bright smile, greeted her. "Good evening, ma'am. How may I assist you?" the receptionist asked without a hint of recognition. Monique smiled politely but didn't immediately respond. She wasn't here for a casual stay. She was here to make an impression, to show the world that she belonged to just as much as anyone else did. "I have a reservation under the name Foster," she said, smoothly handing over her identification. The receptionist scanned the information on her computer and paused for a moment, her fingers hesitating over the keyboard. Monique could tell something was off. The young woman's smile faltered, and she began typing again, but with a noticeable unease. "I apologize, ma'am, but it seems there's an issue with your reservation," she said after a moment, her voice faltering slightly. Monique felt the familiar sting of discomfort deep in her gut, though she didn't show it on her face. "An issue," she repeated, maintaining a calm tone. "What do you mean?" The receptionist's hands shook slightly as she looked back at Monique, her eyes darting to the screen again, then back at her in a way that made Monique's heart drop. "Unfortunately, we're overbooked tonight," the receptionist said almost apologetically. "I'm afraid we don't have any rooms available at the moment." Monique's brows furrowed, but she kept her composure, looking around the lobby as if to gather her thoughts. The hotel was far from full. She could see several guests seated and some coming and going with ease, but none of them had the color of her skin. No, none of them looked like her. Monique's heart beat faster, but she refused to let anger take control. This was not the moment for that. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice steady but with an edge. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, but we simply cannot accommodate you tonight," the receptionist responded, avoiding Monique's gaze. Monique nodded once more, not letting her emotions show. She collected her things and turned to leave, but as she walked out of the lobby, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was no mistake. This was deliberate, and it stung like nothing else had before. As Monique stepped back onto the cold pavement, the weight of the moment hit her like a wave. The rejection, though polite and masked in professional terms, was unmistakably clear. It was about more than just an overbooked room. It was about her presence, her worth, her identity, and how society still viewed her despite all her success. She could feel the sting in her chest, a rawness that echoed the countless small indignities she had endured over the years. Rejections, microaggressions, subtle dismissals. Each one had shaped her, carved out the person she had become. But this was different. This was an outright challenge, a slap in the face she wasn't going to let slide. Monique paused for a moment, looking up at the hotel once more. Its grand facade seemed to mock her now. She had worked tirelessly for everything she had achieved, founded a tech empire, built a multi-million-dollar portfolio, shattered ceilings no one thought a black woman could shatter. But in this moment, standing on the steps of that hotel, none of that seemed to matter. In their eyes, she was still an outsider. She was still the black woman they didn't want in their space. Her mind raced as she stepped away from the building, walking briskly down the sidewalk, her heels clicking with a rhythm that seemed to echo her frustration. She couldn't let this go. She had faced rejection before, even in the early days of her career, when people told her she was too ambitious, too bold, too much. But every time she turned those obstacles into fuel. And now, this moment would be no different. She didn't get into business to prove people wrong. She did it because she believed in herself when no one else did. But now she saw an opportunity, a way to make her mark on the world that went beyond building her fortune. She could feel the fire growing inside of her, pushing her forward with a single thought. Asterisk, I will make them regret this asterisk. Monique pulled out her phone, dialing her trusted lawyer, an experienced corporate strategist who had helped her with many of her past ventures. She briefly explained what had happened and her frustration with the entire situation. I want to buy this hotel, she said, her voice steady but filled with purpose. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a quiet but enthusiastic response. Monique's lawyer knew her well enough to understand that when she said something, it wasn't just a passing thought, it was a plan in motion. Within the next few days, Monique and her team began to dig deep into the financials of the hotel chain. They gathered information on its ownership structure, its financial struggles, its leadership troubles. The more Monique uncovered, the clearer the path became. The hotel wasn't as solid as it appeared. It was in disarray, teetering on the edge of collapse due to poor management and increasing debts. Monique could sense the vulnerability in the chain's position. This was her chance. She started making calls to key players in her network, influential figures in the corporate world and people she knew had the financial clout to help her. One by one, they lined up behind her vision, eager to be part of something groundbreaking. Monique had always been a visionary, someone who saw potential where others saw failure. This hotel, this very place that had turned her away, would soon be hers to control, and she would run it with the same level of excellence she had run every other business in her portfolio. The sense of power surged through her as she mapped out her next steps. She had built her empire from the ground up, faced adversity every step of the way, and now it was time to show the world that nothing, not racism, not prejudice, not even a hotel rejection, could stand in her way. Monique Foster would make sure the world knew that when she said she belonged, she meant it. And this hotel, it would be her message to every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Asterisk, I own this place. No asterisk. Monique sat in her office, surrounded by piles of financial reports, business plans, and research documents, the hum of her high-rise building outside almost an afterthought. The more she dove into the inner workings of the hotel chain, the more the pieces began to fall into place. What had seemed like an impenetrable fortress of wealth and exclusivity was, in fact, a business on the brink of collapse. The hotel was struggling under a massive amount of debt, and its leadership was in chaos. The cracks were wide enough for her to slip through, and Monique wasn't one to let an opportunity go to waste. She ran her fingers across a stack of reports detailing the hotel chain's financial struggles, declining profits, failed renovations, and a mounting list of legal battles. As she studied the numbers, it became increasingly clear that the hotel wasn't just vulnerable. It was desperate. It was teetering on the edge, its former glory quickly fading. In Monique's mind, this was no longer just about the humiliation she had faced. This was about taking control of an empire that was on the verge of losing its shine and turning it into something that would stand as a testament to her success, her vision, and her power. She called her lawyer again, this time with a sharper focus. I need everything on this chain. The board members, the investors, the hidden ties. I want to know who's behind this mess and how much we need to get them out. She knew this would be a battle not only of finances, but also of power. Those who controlled the hotel chain would never let go easily. But Monique had a way of turning adversaries into allies, and she would make sure that those who stood in her way were either bought out or defeated. She wasn't interested in simply buying the hotel. She wanted to own it, control it, and reshape it into her vision of what a luxury hotel could be, one that was diverse, inclusive, and freed from the biases that had once rejected her. Over the next few weeks, Monique and her team worked relentlessly, piecing together the fragmented details of the hotel's ownership. The investors were large, faceless corporations, some of which Monique had dealt with before, and others that were vulnerable to a strategic takeover. She found a path forward, slowly acquiring stock in the company, moving quietly in the background while the hotel's executives remained unaware of the storm brewing beneath them. Monique knew she needed more than just financial support to make her move. She reached out to a few trusted allies in the industry, people who had long admired her grit and ambition and were eager to back her in this venture. They were convinced not only by her financial prowess, but by her reputation as someone who could turn failing enterprises around. One by one, they signed on, pledging their support in return for a stake in the hotel's future. The pieces were falling into place, and with each passing day, Monique's vision grew clearer. She wasn't just buying a hotel, she was about to take control of a symbol of exclusion and rewrite its legacy. But as Monique pushed forward, she knew that those in power would soon start to catch on. They wouldn't sit idly by while a woman like her, a black woman, came for their business. The hotel's executives were already proving to be difficult, refusing to acknowledge the state of their own company, preferring to hold on to the illusion of control. Monique was prepared for the fight. She had spent her entire life proving her worth in a world that doubted her because of the color of her skin. And now she would show them what happened when someone underestimated her. Her resolve grew stronger each day, her mind focused on the ultimate goal. The hotel's rejection had lit a fire in her, but it was her drive for success and justice that would see her through. She wasn't just going to take over this hotel, she was going to make sure that it was a place where everyone, no matter their background, felt welcomed and valued. And when she walked into that lobby again, this time as the owner, it would be her moment of triumph. A triumph not just over the hotel, but over every person who had ever told her no. Monique sat at the head of a polished conference table, the large windows of her office offering a sweeping view of the city below. The sky was painted with the last traces of sunlight, casting long shadows across the room, but Monique wasn't focused on the view. Her attention was entirely on the plans in front of her, the strategy she had meticulously crafted to acquire the hotel chain and transform it into something beyond a luxury brand. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about making a statement. She had already started acquiring shares quietly, gaining influence without revealing her full hand. But now, the next phase of her plan was about to begin, the negotiation. She picked up the phone and dialed the number of one of the most influential players in the hotel industry, a potential ally who could help tip the scales in her favor. They had worked together in the past, and Monique knew this person understood the value of a strong, bold vision. After a brief conversation, the ally agreed to meet her, and they began plotting their next steps together. Monique's strategy was clear. She would use their collective resources and leverage to present a compelling offer to the hotel's board members, one that they couldn't refuse. But she also knew this wouldn't be easy. The hotel's executives had their own interests at stake, and they wouldn't back down without a fight. In the meantime, Monique's legal team was hard at work, pulling together all the information they could find about the hotel's ownership structure and finances. They had already uncovered the weaknesses in the company's operations, but now they were searching for every possible angle of influence. Every detail mattered, and Monique couldn't afford any missteps. She had to stay one step ahead of those in power. The day of the negotiation arrived, and Monique walked into the boardroom with quiet confidence. She had a team of sharp, experienced lawyers and financial experts by her side, all prepared to make their case. The opposing side, however, was made up of old-school businessmen, most of them white and wealthy, looking at Monique with a mixture of disdain and disbelief. She could feel their eyes sizing her up, the subtle way they questioned her presence, her legitimacy in a room full of men who were accustomed to holding power. Monique didn't let that faze her. She'd been underestimated before, and she had learned that the best way to command respect in these situations was to come armed with facts, strategy, and unwavering confidence. She stood tall and began the presentation, outlining the financial struggles of the hotel chain and the dire need for a new direction. The board members tried to interrupt, questioning her motives and casting doubts on her plan. But Monique was prepared for every objection, countering each one with a level of expertise that left them speechless. "The truth is," she said, leaning forward slightly, "this hotel has been on the decline for years. Its leadership is outdated, Its financials are in disarray, and its reputation has suffered because of it. You all know this. I'm here to tell you that if you want to salvage any value from this business, it's time for change. And I'm offering that change. I'm offering you a way out. She watched as the room grew quiet. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly rattled. Monique wasn't offering them a seat at the table. She was offering them an escape. Her offer was fair, but it came with a price: their power, their control, and their legacy. The negotiations continued for hours, with Monique holding steady and demanding concessions that put her in a position to gain the majority control of the company. Slowly, one by one, the executives began to realize they had no other options. Monique's proposal was the lifeline they needed, but it came with a cost: the end of their reign. The deal was struck, and Monique's victory was all but assured. As she left the boardroom, her heart raced with excitement. She had done it. She had outsmarted them, outplayed them, and taken control of the very hotel that had once rejected her. The power was now in her hands, and she was ready to take the next steps toward reshaping the future of this establishment. This wasn't just a business move, it was personal. The rejection she had faced earlier in the story was no longer a wound. It was the fuel that had propelled her forward, and now she stood on the brink of something much bigger. The hotel was hers now, and she would make sure the world knew her name. Monique Foster wasn't just going to change the hotel. She was going to change everything. Monique stood in the grand lobby of the hotel, her heart beating with a mixture of triumph and anticipation. She had made her move. After months of carefully planned negotiations and calculated maneuvering, she had finally become the majority shareholder, gaining control of the very hotel that had once rejected her. The weight of the moment settled over her as she gazed around the lobby, its marble floors, gold accents, and crystal chandeliers now seemingly taunting her with their opulence. This was the place where they had turned her away, and now it was hers to shape. The day after the deal was finalized, Monique called an emergency meeting with her newly acquired leadership team. She had no intention of letting the hotel continue down its path of mediocrity. From the moment she walked through the doors, she had been envisioning how she would transform this institution into something revolutionary, something that would challenge the status quo of the luxury hospitality industry. It wasn't just about turning a profit, it was about creating a place that was inclusive, welcoming, and true to the values that had guided her throughout her career. She called in the heads of marketing, operations, human resources, and finance, and as they gathered around the conference table, she could sense their nervousness. The change that was coming would be nothing short of radical, and they were about to be a part of it. "I've studied this hotel for months," Monique began, her voice strong and unwavering. "I know its weaknesses, its flaws, and its missed opportunities. But now it's time to make this place a symbol of what's possible when you invest in the right people, when you have leadership that truly believes in creating a legacy." The room was silent. Some of the executives exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of what to expect. "I don't care about the way things have always been done," Monique continued. "I care about building something that lasts. Something that honors the diversity of our guests and creates a space where people from all walks of life can come and feel like they belong. This hotel won't just be a place to stay. It will be a place of empowerment, of innovation, and of opportunity. And I'm going to make sure every person who works here knows that they are valued, not just because of their position, but because of who they are." As the executives absorbed her words, Monique's vision became clearer in their minds. She would overhaul the hotel's outdated practices and policies. A focus on inclusivity, sustainability, and diversity would be embedded into the very fabric of the business. She was determined to show the world that luxury didn't have to come at the expense of values like equity and fairness. And she would prove that the most successful businesses were the ones that championed those values at every level of their operation. Monique wasn't just about superficial changes. She understood that true transformation required a shift in culture, a complete rethinking of how things were done. She would revamp the hiring processes to focus on diversity, ensure that training programs were in place for both employees and management, and promote a more transparent and compassionate approach to customer service. There would be no more backdoor deals, no more favoritism. Everything would be above board. But Monique also knew that this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be in changing the public perception of the hotel, especially after the scandal that had once plagued it. The media would likely seize on the fact that a black woman had taken control of the hotel, and she had to be prepared for the backlash. She was ready for it, though. This wasn't her first time facing criticism. In fact, it fueled her determination. She would use the media's attention to her advantage, making sure that the story wasn't just about her personal victory, but about the powerful message it sent to people who had been excluded for far too long. Over the next few weeks, Monique worked tirelessly alongside her team, putting her plans into motion. The first step was to fire the hotel's outdated management team. Their inability to adapt to the changing landscape of the hospitality industry had contributed to the hotel's decline, and Monique knew that fresh leadership was essential. She brought in experienced executives who shared her values and vision, individuals who were known for their ability to transform failing businesses into thriving successes. Monique's first public appearance at the hotel was calculated to be both a statement and a new beginning. She invited a select group of influential journalists, industry leaders, and local figures to attend a press event at the hotel's newly redesigned Grand Ballroom. She wanted the world to know that things were changing and that they were changing fast. When Monique walked into the ballroom, the air was electric. The reporters and guests stood in awe as she made her way to the front of the room. With the same quiet confidence she had always possessed, Monique addressed the crowd. "I'm not here to prove anyone wrong," she said, her voice steady but powerful. "I'm here to show the world that when we invest in people, when we break down barriers, and when we make space for everyone, we all succeed." The room erupted in applause. In that moment, Monique knew she had already won. The hotel was no longer just a symbol of rejection. It was a symbol of empowerment, of change, and of the future she was now shaping. Monique stood in front of the sleek floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, overlooking the bustling city below. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a few months. What had once been a place of exclusion had transformed into a beacon of inclusivity, diversity, and innovation. The media had caught on quickly to the sweeping changes of the hotel, praising Monique for her bold vision and leadership. Articles and news stories ran across major publications, not just celebrating her success as a black woman breaking barriers in a predominantly white industry, but also highlighting the positive changes she had made within the company itself. Her reputation was growing stronger, and so was the hotel's. The moment she had taken control, she had seen the potential for growth beyond just the physical space of the building. She knew the true key to success was in reshaping the culture, the people, the policies, and the overall environment. Guests who had once turned up their noses at her establishment were now seeking it out, eager to experience what Monique had promised, a new kind of luxury where elegance met authenticity. The hotel's transformation wasn't just seen in the glossy marketing materials or the beautifully redesigned spaces. It was felt in every interaction. The staff, now more diverse than ever, were trained not just to meet the needs of guests, but to anticipate them. The new management team she had handpicked was leading with empathy, ensuring that employees at every level felt supported, heard, and appreciated. Monique had made it clear that the success of the hotel was a reflection of the people who worked there, and she treated them as such. Her approach wasn't just about diversity for the sake of optics. It was about ensuring that the hotel reflected the city's vibrant, multicultural energy. It wasn't just the high-end clientele that had once been the focus, but all kinds of travelers, from young creatives to seasoned professionals and families on vacation. Everyone was made to feel equally valued. As the weeks went by, Monique noticed that the hotel was beginning to develop a new reputation, one of inclusivity, excellence, and innovation. Guest feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and the social media buzz around the hotel was growing. People from all walks of life were posting about their experiences, sharing stories of how they felt welcomed in a place that had once catered only to the elite. For Monique, this was the true success, not just the financial growth, but the cultural shift that was taking place. But with success came new challenges. Monique's victory hadn't gone unnoticed by everyone in the industry. There were whispers behind closed doors, critiques from competitors who viewed her rise as a threat to their carefully constructed empires. Many still couldn't fathom how a black woman had not only entered but taken over the world of luxury hospitality. Some tried to undermine her efforts, dismissing her vision as a fleeting trend or even attempting to spread rumors of failure within the hotel's operations. But Monique had learned long ago that the louder the critics, the more powerful the message she was sending. Rather than respond to these detractors, Monique chose to continue her work, focusing on what she could control and proving, once again, that her vision was stronger than any obstacle in her path. The hotel's bookings soared, with guests eager to stay at the newly branded luxury destination, and more partnerships began to roll in. She was now a force to be reckoned with in the business world, and she was showing the industry that true luxury wasn't just about a glossy exterior. It was about substance, authenticity, and inclusivity. Monique had become an icon in her own right, not just for breaking through barriers, but for doing it with integrity. She wasn't just leading a hotel, she was leading a revolution. The entire hospitality sector was taking notes, and the entire city had taken notice of the woman who had turned rejection into a resounding success. Still, Monique remained grounded. She had seen the dangers of hubris in the past and knew that staying humble, remembering her roots, and continuing to challenge herself was the key to maintaining the momentum she had built. There was always more to be done, more change to be driven, more people to uplift, and more barriers to break. The hotel, her empire, was only the beginning. Monique knew that the real work lay ahead, and her ambitions were only growing. She had turned this once rejecting hotel into a triumph, and now she had her eyes set on something even bigger. It was time for the world to understand that Monique Foster wasn't just a name, it was a force, and no one would ever reject her again. Months had passed since Monique's transformation of the hotel had begun, and the changes were evident to everyone, from the guests who praised the rejuvenated atmosphere to the industry experts who recognized the hotel as a trailblazer. The hotel was now synonymous with luxury that embraced diversity, a place where inclusivity wasn't just a buzzword, but the foundation of its success. Yet, as Monique looked out over the skyline from her office, she knew that the work she had started was far from over. The hospitality world had been quick to recognize her as a disruptor, and with that recognition came scrutiny. Many competitors, especially those from the older, more entrenched establishments, were starting to feel the pressure. Monique had become a symbol of change, and some of them were desperate to figure out how to stop her momentum. Her success threatened their carefully crafted monopolies, and in business, that kind of threat didn't go unnoticed. She had anticipated this. She'd known that those who stood in her way wouldn't go down without a fight. But what Monique hadn't expected was the level of passive-aggressive tactics some of her competitors would employ. Rumors were spread about her management style, questions were raised about the financial stability of her hotel, and small-scale smear campaigns began surfacing in niche industry blogs. Monique could feel the pressure mounting, but she wasn't about to let this new challenge derail everything she had worked for. She called a meeting with her most trusted advisors and team members to discuss the situation. "We knew this was coming," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "Whenever you disrupt the status quo, people will fight back. But we don't have to fight fire with fire. We fight it with results." Her legal team was already working on shutting down the smear campaigns, sending out cease and desist letters to anyone trying to tarnish her reputation through false claims. Meanwhile, her marketing team was pushing ahead with even stronger campaigns that showcased the real stories of the people whose lives have been touched by the changes of the hotel, from staff members who had been promoted to guests who had felt empowered by the hotel's inclusivity. Instead of getting bogged down by the negative noise, Monique and her team focused on amplifying the positive changes they had made. She even went further by launching a new initiative to support underrepresented entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry. By offering mentorship and financial backing to Black and minority-owned hotel startups, Monique was using her platform not just to defend her own business, but to elevate others who shared her values. The initiative was an instant success, and it began to shift the narrative. Instead of focusing on the controversies being stirred up by her competitors, the media started paying attention to the larger movement she was spearheading. Monique wasn't just building a successful hotel, she was creating a community of changemakers, proving that diversity wasn't just a moral imperative, but a smart business strategy. The initiative garnered major press coverage, highlighting her efforts to uplift other businesses and ensure that the hospitality industry truly reflected the world it served. Monique's commitment to reshaping the industry from the inside out was evident. She continued to reinvest in her hotel, expanding its reach globally and collaborating with renowned architects to push the boundaries of sustainable, inclusive luxury. More properties were being added to the brand, each one embodying the values that had made her success so powerful. Yet, despite her outward confidence, Monique remained aware of the challenges that lay ahead. She had witnessed firsthand how the elite could use their resources to try to block those who threatened their dominance. As her empire grew, so did the scrutiny. But Monique was used to overcoming obstacles, and she wasn't going to stop now. In her private moments, she reflected on the long, arduous journey that had brought her here, from the rejection at the hotel's door to standing at the top of an empire she had built from the ground up. She was determined to remain grounded, remembering that it wasn't just about the success she had achieved, but about the impact she could continue to make. Monique wasn't just changing the way the hotel industry operated, she was reshaping what it meant to be successful in a world that often tried to limit her. She knew that as long as she stayed true to her values and continued to challenge the norms, nothing could stop her. Her vision for the future was clear: a world where talent, diversity, and innovation were the ultimate luxury, and Monique Foster would lead the way. The world had begun to shift around Monique Foster. What started as a challenge to the status quo had become a full-fledged movement, one that was shaping industries far beyond hospitality. As she stood at the helm of an empire that had begun to touch every corner of the globe, Monique knew that her journey wasn't just about building wealth. It was about creating lasting change. Her hotel chain was now a model for the future, not just in luxury, but in diversity, sustainability, and empowerment. The world's elite had slowly started to take note, not just of Monique's financial success, but of the values she had built her empire upon. What had once been met with skepticism was now being hailed as the blueprint for the future of business. Monique had proven that inclusivity wasn't just a feel-good policy, it was a smart strategy that resonated with today's consumers. She had found a way to merge purpose with profit, creating an experience that people couldn't help but support. But for Monique, it was never just about the bottom line. Her deeper goal was to change the way people viewed success. She had seen firsthand how systems of inequality had made it difficult for individuals, especially women of color, to succeed in business, and now she was working tirelessly to ensure that those barriers didn't exist for the next generation. She was committed to making sure that the opportunities she had fought for were available to others, creating a ripple effect of change that would be felt for decades to come. Her initiatives were only expanding. Monique had launched scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in hospitality and business, and she was now working on building a network for underrepresented entrepreneurs across various sectors. Her influence had become a force that was changing how businesses approach diversity, leadership, and corporate responsibility. But success always comes with a cost. Monique's rise had made her a target for some, and the whispers of her competitors had not completely faded. There were still those who tried to undermine her, especially as her influence spread beyond the hotel industry. The media, while largely supportive, still had its share of detractors, some of whom sought to criticize her leadership or question her methods. But Monique remained steadfast. She had already faced rejection and bias at the start of her journey. These new challenges were nothing more than distractions. What mattered most to Monique was not the voices of critics, but the lives she had touched. She often received letters and messages from people across the world, employees, guests, young entrepreneurs, telling her how her success had inspired them to reach higher, to break their own barriers. It was these stories that kept her going, even when the weight of her responsibilities felt heavy. One evening, as Monique sat alone in her office, looking out over the city, she reflected on the road that had led her here. From the rejection at the hotel's front door to standing as its proud owner, she had fought for every inch of her success. She had faced resistance, prejudice, and doubt at every turn, but each challenge had only fueled her determination to prove that she belonged. Her phone buzzed on her desk, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from her team, a final draft of an upcoming press release about a new partnership with a global sustainability initiative. It was a step forward, but as she read it, Monique knew she wasn't done yet. She had laid the foundation, but there was still so much more to build. The next chapter was just beginning, and she was ready for it. Monique smiled to herself, the quiet strength that had gotten her this far still steady within her. She had faced rejection, racism, and doubt, and she had turned all of it into the driving force behind her success. The world had watched as she took control of a legacy, and now she was ready to create her own. With unwavering confidence, Monique stood from her desk and walked toward the door. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, and there was no reason to start now. The hotel, her empire, and her vision were more than just a success. They were the beginning of a new era. And Monique Foster wasn't about to stop. She had already changed the game. Now she was determined to redefine it.